Welcome to Chalk or Not for UFC 317. This segment, I go over the chalky spots and whether you should be parlaying them or avoiding them or even playing them straight. And a reminder that the definition for what I consider a chalky play is anything minus 185 or wider. And for this 12-fight card, I believe there are 7 fights that I would consider to be chalky. So let's get right to it. First one up that we're going to be talking about is Diniz coming in at minus 350 against the UFC newcomer Alvin Guzzi Hines. Now, Hines has a bit of a cult following after his time with the LFA, and a lot of people were surprised to see him get the jump straight to the UFC. But considering he's 33, 34 years old, it's better than having to go through the Contender Series, and now he actually gets to live out his dreams of being a part of the UFC roster. Now, Hines is a very physical, strong grappler, a guy that normally looks to take opponents to the ground and get that work in from that top position. He has a very good submission game for his level, I'll say. Not a Damian Maia type of guy by any means, but he can really clamp onto those Kimuras, those Americanas, has a rear naked choke win under his record as well, and he knows how to throw big leather on the feet if he is forced to. Now, going up against Diniz, who we obviously know is a very solid kickboxer, and we've seen his issues if he does end up getting taken down. That's why it's kind of hard for me to get behind Diniz as a chalky favorite, because sure, he might look it in the striking realm, but how confident are we that he can keep it there? Because he's not a guy that, chases that knockout. He kind of just allows it to happen, and that almost allows his opponents to fight into those matchups, just as we saw with Marcin Tybura and even Austin Lane in the first round of their matchup. So if Hines is just desperate with that takedown from jump, maybe he gets it, and maybe he's able to get that finish quickly over Diniz before Diniz has the opportunity of getting back to his feet and showcasing that striking advantage. So I'm going to have to put Diniz in the not chalk-worthy category for that grappling edge that Hines has in this matchup. All right, next up, the chalkiest of them all, we got Jacoby Smith coming in at minus 2,500 as he takes on Nico Price, the UFC veteran. I'm not going to go too deep in this one. You guys have been watching this Chalk or Not segment for a while. Anything over minus 800, minus 700 even, depending on the matchup, you don't parlay. No matter what. I don't care what the skill discrepancy is. Minus 2,500 is just prohibitive beyond belief. Thus, Jacoby Smith is not chalk-worthy. I'm picking him to win, knockout Nico Price, but minus 2,500 just does not do anything for parlays, especially in a volatile game like mixed martial arts. Minus 2,500 should never be parlayed, so I'm going to put that in the not chalk-worthy category. All right, next up, we got Tracy Cortez going up against Viviane Araujo. Araujo had a solid matchup last time around against Karine Silva, pulling off the upset that night, but I don't think she'll be able to do that here against Cortez. Now, Cortez showed, obviously, she's not ready for the top of the division yet, as she came up short against Rose Namajunas in a short notice main event back in July, but I expect this to be a matchup where she bounces back into the win column and showcases her wrestling dominance just as she has in the past. Araujo could make this competitive early, but she's not much of a finisher, and I think it's just a matter of time before she starts cracking under that wrestling pressure of Cortez, leading to Cortez winning this fight on the scorecards, and I'm more than fine with parlaying her at that minus 260 line. Next up, Gregory Rodrigues coming in at minus 220, going up against the returning Jack Hermansson. Now, Rodrigues was roughly about minus 185 just yesterday or the day before, and now finds himself at minus 220, so it's obvious the public is starting to come in on him, and I have to agree. I know he didn't look the greatest against Jared Cannonier last time, but the threats and pressure that Cannonier provides is not the type of threats that we're going to see from the Hermansson side. I expect to see a classic Rodrigues fight here where he utilizes forward pressure, power punches, maybe mixes in the clinch and a few takedowns, but I think he'll really ruffle the feathers of a Hermansson who's been out of action for nearly a year and a half now and is trying to recover from a ton of surgeries, shoulder surgery, but a lot of other injuries and rehabs that he's had to go through to try to get back into the cage. But I think this is the perfect time for Rodrigues to catch Hermansson, and I think he gets the win, and I think he is chalk-worthy at minus 220. All right, next up, we got a banger of a bantamweight matchup here between Philippe Lima, who comes in at minus 205, taking on the previously hyped Peyton Talbott. Now, everybody remembers January, Peyton Talbott minus 1,000 favorite against Raoni Barcelos, and he got taken down numerous times in that matchup and had no answer in terms of getting back to his feet or stopping the takedowns that were coming to him in the following rounds. And that's where his issue's been. He's a very solid and talented striker who has some very good knockout power when he's able to get the timing and accuracy on point. But when he's facing grapplers, we've seen in the past he's done a good job in terms of stuffing those takedowns. But when he's facing guys that know how to set up takedowns better, that's where he starts to struggle. And unfortunately for him, he's fighting a guy in Felipe Lima who I think is just more complete of a fighter at this stage in his career. Lima was the former Octagon champion. I believe he won the FCR title as well over there in Europe. All-Stars gym representative from there in Sweden, training alongside Hamzat Chimaev and all the other guys coming out of that gym. Very high-level fighter. Slick striker, slick entries on his takedowns, and great control and BJJ as well. I expect him to make this look kind of dominant and put together a solid total package here against Peyton Talbott. Thus, I'm going to put Felipe Lima in the chalk-worthy category. All right, co-main event, flyweight title on the line here with Alexandre Pantoja coming in at minus 250, going up against the challenger Kai Kara-France. Now, Kara-France obviously has a little bit of a striking advantage and has the power to really change the dynamic of the fight. But I think Pantoja has shown that he can really master the ability to blend his striking behind the ability to just grab onto his opponents and grind those guys out or find that submission within 2 rounds. And I think he'll be able to do that here against Kai Kara-France pretty emphatically. Pantoja is a nasty striker when he has his cardio about him, but it's really his grappling that makes him so dangerous. And I think it'll take him about 2 to 2.5 rounds to get that position he needs against Kara-France, which will lead to Pantoja finding the submission. And I don't mind him at minus 250 either. I think he will be that dominant over Kai Kara-France. Thus, I'll make Pantoja a chalk-worthy spot. All right, main event now, lightweight title vacant. Lightweight title on the line as we have Ilia Topuria coming in at minus 500 going up against Charles do Bronx Oliveira. Now, I've tried to fade Topuria in the past. I was heavy on his train when he first came into the UFC and even pre-UFC, but then I tried fading him with Volkanovski. I tried fading him with Max Holloway, but what he was able to do to those two guys, I'm never betting against this guy again. Maybe with Islam Makhachev, but even then I'd have some question marks. Great grappling. He's a high-level BJJ black belt. Finished his first 7 of 8 pro fights by submission, but has been knocking dudes out cold ever since joining the UFC, showcasing he is a very crisp boxer as well. Keeps a high, tight guard, blitzes the pocket very well, and lets go with his power shots, which often catch opponents off guard. And I think here against Oliveira might be able to have some success sticking him from distance, landing a few leg kicks as well, and making things a little bit chaotic. But I think it's just a matter of time before Topuria lands that big shot and puts Oliveira away on the feet. I also wouldn't be surprised if Topuria wants to make a statement and try to take Oliveira to the mat and showcase that he's a pretty damn good BJJ black belt himself. I'm starting to get that, that aura from Topuria that he might want to showcase that style of his game. But no matter what, I think he goes out there and eventually finds a finish here over Oliveira, and I think he makes it look dominant enough for this minus 500 to be chalk-worthy. Thus, let's put him in the chalk-worthy category as well. All right. There you guys go, chalk or not for UFC 317. I dropped the PFL breakdown for you guys early today, so make sure you guys check that out, as well as all the other UFC content I got dropping for you guys. And I will see you guys again tomorrow for the quick picks version of the UFC 317 breakdown. See you guys then. Peace.